Great, and we have our speakers to the council. They've joined us already, so they're in the waiting room, if you will. So, councillors, we'll start the meeting. It's 2 minutes past 6, and we are live in our meeting, and for the first time doing it via a virtual meeting. And we're streaming that through the web as well. So the first point of order in our meeting is to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. And even though we're meeting virtually, each one of us are in our own houses and offices across the municipality of Latrobe. So with that in mind, I would like to acknowledge that we are all meeting here today on the traditional land of the Brackalong people of the Gunai-Kurnai Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging as well. I'd like to now read the opening prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as it is on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Councillors, we are stepping through a little bit differently tonight because we are all in different locations across the municipality, but this is the first time that we have ever done a council meeting virtually. We've had many council meetings that have been live streamed over the last 3.5 years. And we've had plenty of meetings and briefings and information presentations over the last 6 weeks where we've all met like this. But this is the first time that we combine the two, where we are meeting together in a virtual world and we are streaming that live. We also have the added benefit of having public participation now, where people are able to join us either via video link or via phone link, and put questions or ask questions of the council to any item then on the agenda. We have 2 people who are going to do that, who are sitting in the waiting room at the moment. So we'll get to see them soon. Much like the conditions of entry when we're in a room together, the conditions are the same. I think that it's worthwhile noting that all councillors and people who are attending, who are sitting in our waiting room, now need to behave in a courtesy manner, and anyone who that steps out of the bounds of acting appropriately can be dismissed from the meeting. And as much as there isn't a physical room, we can dismiss anyone who acts out of order from the meeting, and that's in accordance to section 58 of our local law. That the chair may order or cause the removal of any person, including a councillor, who disrupts the meeting or fails to comply with the direction. So the same rules sit. We wouldn't expect that there's going to be any disorderly conduct this evening, councillors. The council meeting is being live streamed. That's going out through our YouTube channel, and it's also being linked through to our Facebook page. As is with our normal Local Law 1, in accordance with Local Law 1, a person must not operate an audio tape or any other recording equipment at any council meeting without first obtaining the consent of the chair, and such consent may at any time during the course of the meeting be revoked by the council or the chair, as it may be. No one has requested that they are recording this meeting, and as it sits with our local law, this meeting will be recorded and archived on our YouTube channel, but a permission does need to be sought if someone wants to take that footage and use it or broadcast it again, and they need to seek the permission of council. It is not sitting in a public domain for others to do with as they want. So hopefully we will be recording for an archive purpose, and anyone who wants to use that will need to contact council. The new rules came through a number of weeks ago. We would know that the state government sat and put the omnibus through as a part of legislation. And with that, the state government gave us permission, and all local governments of Victoria, the permission to meet virtually, which is what we're doing tonight. And this is because of the COVID-19 pandemic that swept across the world. Those conditions of being able to meet like this require 3 things. That councillors who are attending must be able to hear the proceedings. They must be able to hear each other. The councillors must be able to see other members in attendance, and they must be able to be seen, and councillors must be heard as well. So we don't usually do a roll call, but what I will do this evening is I will whip around the virtual room and ask you if you can hear, if you can see, and you can be heard, and then we'll know that all councillors are present. Councillor Alan McFarlane, Deputy Mayor, I will start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I can see all of my colleagues. I can hear all of my colleagues, and I'm assuming they can hear me. Thank you.
We can hear you. Thank you very much. Councillor Graham Minimus.
All correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Great to see you and hear you. Councillor Kelly O'Callaghan.
All very clear here, Mr. Mayor. Good to see everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Dale Harriman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can see all the other councillors and I can hear all the other councillors. Thank you.
And we can hear you. Thank you very much. Councillor Darren Howe.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Mayor. I can see all the other councillors. Good evening. And we can hear all the other councillors. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Brad Law.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Yeah, can hear everybody and everyone's very good. Everyone's looking well.
Thank you. And last but not least, Councillor Darryl White.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can hear you and hear all the other councillors as well, and all looking very dapper. And so, yeah, all go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. We do have an apology tonight in Councillor Sharon Gibson, who is an apology, has contacted us and is feeling unwell at home. So we send her our best and do have an apology from Councillor Gibson tonight. She's quite disappointed she couldn't make. She doesn't miss many meetings at all. So we note her absence. And for people at home, I'll also notice that our CEO, Stephen Piacenti, is with us in the room. And the others that are in our room are our general management team and our IT staff as well, making all of the buttons and the dials happen as well. For me, I'll be chairing the meeting like this, standing up, and I'll be moving from screen to screen to screen, and you'll see my head move around a little bit because I have pieces of paper and multiple screens going at once, but I am paying attention to you. So thank you very much for working through this way. We move to item 4, and I ask councillors if there are any declarations of interest in tonight's agenda. Councillor Harriman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have an indirect interest 78B on item 16.1. The item in question mentions the Trelvin Lions Club, or names the Trelvin Lions Club, and I'm Vice President. Therefore, I will absent myself during the discussion on that item.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. And we have worked out that as you would normally leave a physical room, with this one, it's not as simple as just turning your camera off. We need to actually have you leave the meeting and then rejoin the meeting. So thank you very much for declaring that up front. At any other point, if any of the other councillors, as we move through the agenda, recognise something they might have an indirect or direct interest in, they can flag that at that point. So that's part of the way that we'll work today. Moving to item 5, which is the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. This is the council will confirm the ordinary meeting of the 6th of April 2020. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Middlemas moving. Thank you for the indication by hand. And Councillor McFarlane is seconding. Thank you for the indication by hand. Are there any other councillors oppose this? No? No indication by hand. Councillor Middlemas, would you like to speak to this? No. Thank you very much for shaking your head. Councillor McFarlane, would you like to speak to this? No. There's a standard practice. So with a mover and a seconder, and with no speakers and no opposition, the minutes of the previous meeting are adopted, and that has been moved. Thank you very much. Quite standard with the adoptions of minutes. We move to item 6, which is the acknowledgements, an opportunity for councillors to raise any formal acknowledgements that they would like to make at this time. Councillors? Councillor Darryl White.
I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge a lady from Traralgon South, Marty Simons, who is a legend out there in the sporting field, and particularly in regard to the tennis community. And she has recently passed away, and so I'm sure I can say that we, from council's point of view, if I remember, her husband was a councillor for a long time in the Shire of Traralgon, but she was an absolute legend and stalwart for the Traralgon South community, and so we acknowledge her passing and offer our condolences to all of her family. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. Yes, Marty passed away last week, and I believe they do have a tennis court named after her out there at Traralgon South, so that's great. Councillor O'Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on behalf of my colleagues, would like to acknowledge the 4 Victoria Police officers who lost their lives in the tragic freeway incident near Kew just over a week ago. Senior Constable Kevin King, Constable Glenn Humphreys, Leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor, and Constable Joshua Presney, all who have now been laid to rest. Our thoughts are with their family, their friends, and of course their Victoria Police colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor O'Callaghan. Any other councillors wish to make an acknowledgement at this point? No one else has got anything. I'd just like to acknowledge the 100th birthday of May O'Reilly, a Traralgon resident, on Sunday, yesterday, the 3rd of May. May has lived in Traralgon for a long, long time and a member of her church community, and has been a wonderful stalwart of Traralgon for many, many years, and turned 100, which is a fantastic effort. And I say happy birthday to May on her 100th birthday. So she would have got a letter from the Queen, I think, is the way to go. So congratulations to her and her family. A different kind of celebration where you can't get together, so hopefully they'll be able to do something in the coming months where they'll be able to get together. But happy birthday. Any other councillors wish to make an acknowledgement before we move on? Thank you, councillors. Thank you very much for that participation. We move now to item 7 on our agenda, which is the public participation time. David and Brian, speakers tonight, are in our waiting room. We let you in a second, and people will be able to see and hear our 2 speakers tonight. But first of all, I'll just check with the CEO, Mr. Piacenti. Are there any questions that have been sent in, Mr. CEO?
No questions on notice for this meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Then we'll move to our speakers on the matter of 14.1. Both speakers are speaking on 14.1, which is the use and development of land for a childcare centre at 6 to 8 Winifred Street Mall. We have Mr. David Di Pellegrini on the line, and we won't be able to see David, but we will be able to hear David. So, Mr. Pellegrini, can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor Dan, thank you. I can hear you and I can see all the other councillors. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Great. So, Mr. Di Pellegrini, what we'll do is you have 3 minutes to present to council. We have a timer clock that we can give you an indication, and then any councillors may want to ask you a question. They can ask you a question of that, and you can address that and get some more time if there are any questions that the councillors have after your presentation. So, if you're ready to go, we can start the clock when you start to present to us.
Yeah, no worries. All right. Thank you, Mayor Dan. But you've obviously already seen my objection and many other people's objection to this childcare centre or proposed childcare centre next to my house. I'm at number 10 Winifred Street, and there's also a petition that you should have available to you about how we feel about this situation going on. There is a couple of points I would like to bring up. Is something not mentioned in all my letters and correspondence. One of them is an important one. In the correspondence that I've received from the Shire, they're not counting Buckley Street Childcare Centre, the old Mall High School Childcare Centre, and Kylie's Childcare Centre, which all three of these are within 400 metres of this location or proposed location, and there is adequate vacancies at the moment. So that's one thing to consider. Another one is, how can I say, the transport, buses and cars parked on our roads. We have main roads, bus routes and school routes on this same street. If there happens to be cars parked, I'm concerned at the safety and traffic and how this will be managed. I know that in your response letters to us, that they say there is going to be a traffic management plan put in place, but realistically, how many mothers are going to drop their kids off on the bus, walk 400 or 500 metres down the road, drop their kids off, go back to the bus, wait half an hour and go to work? You know, it's a good plan, but it's not realistic. And this is already, and from that petition that I have submitted to you people, it's a quiet neighbourhood, and our people wish to keep that a quiet neighbourhood. And we're looking to keep local businesses supported. There's 3 within 400 metres. There's approximately another 3 or 4 already in town, and there's numerous more in close towns like Traralgon, Churchill, Moe, all that sort of stuff, with lots of vacancies. I cannot give you exact figures, but I feel that I don't think this is appropriate for this area, this part of town. That's my concerns. Pretty much not more to say, but yeah, thank you all for giving me the time to have my say and have you listened to me for my opinion. I am right next door to where the proposed site is.
Well, thanks very much, David. So I'll just ask the councillors if there are any questions that they may have to clarify anything on what you've spoken about already. Councillors, do we have anything for Mr. Mr. D?
Just David. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, David.
So, yeah, just David. It's easy.
Yeah, no. All right. Any questions? No, there's no questions of any of the councillors. David, you're off the hook, and thank you very much for participating in our council meeting and letting us know of your concerns.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mayor Dan. Yep.
Good
I appreciate that.
Much appreciated. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's put you on mute there, Dave. Brian, I'll unmute your button there. Brian, I hope I get your surname right. Is it Wang?
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks very much for waiting. You're our other speaker on the same topic of 14.1 in our agenda this evening. Same as David did, we'll give you 3 minutes And then the councillors may have questions where you can elaborate or clarify any questions that they may have. So thanks very much for waiting. Your time can start when you're ready to go.
So my time on.
Yep, you're ready to go when you want.
So my name is Brian. I'm speaking on behalf of the landowner for this project. So this project, is designed and planned and submitted by Latrobe Valley Drafting. They are qualified, certified, and compliant drafting company. This proposal is aligned with the planning requirement under the state laws and the Latrobe planning scheme. As far as this proposal is concerned, all the criteria for a proposed childcare center have been met, including location criteria is on a main road, close to public transport, and easy access to the Morwell CBD and the family. Site criteria is close to the residential home and primary school, easy and safe for children to attend a school. All design and construction is follow the local laws and local planning scheme. Design criteria, all requirements have been addressed. A report, the operational manual, and car parking management plan have been sent last month by LBD before this meeting. Car parking criteria, the car parking ratio is a 1 car park space for 5 children or 0.22 car parking space per child. Under the Latrobe planning scheme, clause 52.6 and 5, staff parking, drop off, visitors parking, on and off street parking, space, signage, and line marking all have been addressed in the parking management report. Landscaping has been designed to meet the requirement of the council. Management, the staff working hours, operations, disposal, and waste management have all been addressed in the operational manual as well. My statement to the council today is that I believe this proposal is beneficial for the local community and economy. The Child Care Center will provide an early childhood education service to this area so that children can be nurtured and educated while parents are working. This project will create local employment opportunities and provide more choice for families wishing to enroll their children. So please consider approving this application. And thank you.
You're on mute there, Mr. Mayor.
I am. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Occupational hazard, I'm sorry. Thanks very much, Brian. That was right on time in 3 minutes. So it was a very good and comprehensive presentation. Councillors, are there any questions of Mr. Wang before we let him go? Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one from me, I guess, Mr. Mayor, is that Mr. Huang has obviously presumably seen the report and the recommendation that's contained within the report and all the conditions that have been identified within the report. Has he got any concerns about the recommendation? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor White. Yes, Brian, you heard that question. You were able to address that?
I'm quite happy with the council manage this project. So yeah, so I want to hear the good news from the council. But I think the childcare center is good for the community and the economy in this in Morwell. And this will provide opportunity for the parent and can go to work, and you know and children can go to the school, the childcare center. This is an opportunity for them to choose quality education. That's important to this sector as well. You can see the childcare center is regulated under the government, local government, Victoria government. So it's a lot of regulation there. So unless we provide good quality service to the local community, then hopefully and everybody follow the rule, and children first. We're not just making money on this sector, but we have to think about the parents and the children and quality education. That's all about.
Thank you. Councillor White, happy? Thank you. Nod. Any other questions, councillors? Before we let Mr. Wayne go? No? All right. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you very much for dialing into our virtual meeting and for giving us a bit of insight into the works that you're planning to do in Winifred Street. Thank you very much. We'll stay quiet now. Thank you. All right. So, councillors, you see I'm looking off to the side there. Oh. Am I out of the meeting?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, my computer is frozen. I'm just going to have to reset that thing. I apologise. I'll just go through a
Looks like our mayor's had some technical difficulties, councillors, and people out there watching YouTube. So under the procedure which has been implemented under the Local Government Act, if there's technical issues, obviously having the mayor not on screen is a major difficulty. That the meeting is suspended temporarily, so just need to wait for the mayor to return. So we can play some elevator music. Anyone good at singing? No. Just wait for the mayor to return. Here he is, just re-arrived, it says on my screen. Welcome back, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. If anyone's computer went down, it'd have to be mine.
Yes. So I just mentioned that for councillors to leave the meeting due to technical difficulties, the meeting is temporarily suspended under the legislation. Particularly difficult when it's the mayor. So, welcome back.
Thank you very much. I was just to let everyone know is that once our presenters have left, I can dismiss them and the software of the meeting actually froze. So I had to shut the software down and And now we're back on. So if I could ask you, Mr. Piacenti, would you be able to lock the meeting now so no one else can enter now that we've had our two presenters leave?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, did we lose a councillor? Yes. We have Councillor McFarlane, yes, for some reason.
All right.
You may have had technical difficulties as well, Mr. Mayor, so I won't lock the meeting.
Maybe we leave the meeting open. So, councillors, as a part of the provisions of the legislation that was handed down for us to do virtual meetings, it was said that at any point, if a councillor had technical difficulties, whether that be myself or anyone, we need to immediately just adjourn the meeting to make sure everyone's back on. So if at any point you ever lose, audio or visual or anything like that, just please let me know. We'll just adjourn and work through it. We don't have a large agenda items tonight, but we can work through that systematically and just get through each item as we go. Councillor O'Callaghan, did I see a hand raised there or no? All right, thank you. Thank you. So we're back on track. Everyone's here. Councillor McFarlane, you're back with us. I sent out an email earlier on, councillors. We're going to move the notices of motion at 9.1 and 9.2 to after 17.5 this evening. So we're moving now to 14.1, which is the items that was just spoken about by our two presenters. So this is one that the community are most interested in, I think, where we've had presenters. So we're moving straight to 14.1, which is the use and development of land for a childcare centre at 6 to 8 Winifred Street, Morwell. Do we have a mover for this? Councillor McFarlane, you've indicated you're moving that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harriman, giving me a wave for a seconder. Is there any opposition to this item? Councillor Middlemas, you've indicated an opposition. Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, as the mover, you get to speak first. You can unmute your microphone. Councillor McFarlane, have we got you there? No, we don't have you on the audio at the moment, Councillor McFarlane. We'll just check if we can unmute you. No, we can't. If you can just press your unmute button. It's not working. We might have an IT staff member come up and see you. There are plenty of members of staff where Councillor McFarlane is.
System works, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, it seems to be working. So thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane. You, as the mover of this proposed resolution, have an opportunity to speak first. So we'll hand the floor over to you. And I should mention before, councillors, there's no need to stand as we normally would in a council meeting. We can stay seated. It sits within our local law that we can stay seated when we are addressing council. So as you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having heard both David and Brian, it was good to hear both of their viewpoints, and certainly I understand the concerns contained in. However, I'm of the belief that the proposal does stack up in a planning sense. A block of some 1,400 square metres with the main building at the rear of the block, and that site some 20 years ago operated for many years as a church. Through a consideration of objectives and with the applicant, the number of children has been reduced which results in all the parking requirements being accommodated on the site. And as was mentioned before, a parking management plan confirms this. A number of conditions are proposed to satisfy the amenity, development, landscaping and infrastructure concerns. Winifred Street's classified as a major access street, has a pavement width of some 11 metres and can accommodate a nominated capacity of 2,000 vehicle movements per day, which is more than adequate for the situation as is. Having considered, as I said before, having considered the concerns, and I appreciate those concerns, I believe that the proposal is consistent or generally consistent with the relevant objectives and guidelines of our planning scheme, and I believe for that reason I support the development. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Harriman, as the seconder, you have the opportunity to speak next.
I'll reserve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Middlemas, you indicated some opposition. I'll give you an opportunity to speak if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of those unusual situations where everything that's proposed meets all the rules, meets all the requirements. It's almost impossible to vote this one down. Under our, and I'll have to read it because it's beside me, under the General Residential Zone Schedule 1, this is an approved type of operation. So the people who've proponents have put that up have got every reason to put it up and expect it to be granted. I have reservations about the actual location. It's very close to a very awkward corner. But again, as Councillor McFarlane has pointed out, our expert traffic officers say that this road is capable of handling the traffic that will be generated there. In other words, everything lines up for this application. It would be very hard to knock back, and it'll be very hard to overturn at the next body of review above us. But as a local councillor, I'm not comfortable with the location. I don't like the traffic configuration with the bend very close to it there. I'm also not really satisfied that it is ideal, an ideal spot to have it. The nearest child mining centre is actually out on the main road. If you go and have a look at the one near the skate park, it has got a complete parking area beside it. So I suppose my opposition, my vote against this, is merely a swipe at the planning scheme. I believe council should have more power in this area where they should be able to say, look, it might meet the planning requirements, it might meet all the traffic requirements, but we as councillors don't think it's adequate for this area. So I might be waving a feather in the wind, but I will vote against this because I don't think it's appropriate for just that spot. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Middlemas. Any other councillor wish to speak on this matter? 14.1. No. Councillor Harriman, you reserve the right to speak. Did you want to speak now?
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, I just concur with what the Deputy Mayor, Councillor McFarlane, has said. I understand the reservations Councillor Middlemas has. I look at it, we very recently, or this term as a council, approved Live Work Latrobe as a planning amendment across the entire city. This fits within that, and as Councillor McFarlane has said, it meets all the requirements. I do understand the angst of the local residents and Councillor Middlemas's feather in the wind, but I think that's a great thing to see. But on the grounds of it, it meets Live Work Latrobe, it meets the planning criteria, so I will be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. Councillor McFarlane, did you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, and again, as I said, I believe the array of conditions that have been put on this allay some of the concerns, and certainly the one in relation to the number of children has reduced that issue. And I believe that our officers, in accordance with our planning scheme, and as Councillor Middlemas rightly says, it basically says that it is just about allowed. and I believe that the planning officers have looked at all of the particular conditions, including the time the centre would operate, to minimise the impacts on the surrounding community. But as I say, I believe it's consistent with our planning scheme, and hence we should approve it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. As we've had speakers on this, we need to put this to a vote. Now, this is our first vote online as a virtual group, so I'll ask you to show hands when I ask for the vote, and then I'll call them out. If you could keep the hands up while I do that, I'll read them out to you. If I get anything wrong because a camera freezes or I can't see anything properly, please let me know at the end of this. We want to get these votes right. So those in favour of this, 4. Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Law, Councillor White, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, and myself, Councillor Clancy. Thank you. And those against? Councillor Middlemas, Councillor O'Callaghan. Can I just confirm that I counted those votes right? Okay, 6-2. That has passed through as recommended. So thank you very much for working that through, councillors. Does anyone? I'll just clarify that the votes were counted correctly and everyone's clarified with that. Yep. Okay. Good. Don't want to move on if someone feels as if their vote was counted incorrectly with this new technology. We're moving to 14.2. This is a proposed resolution that council determines that Latrobe Valley City deal is not pursued at this time, and Latrobe City's advocacy and government relation efforts is focused on opportunities that emerged following COVID-19 crisis, consistent with the council plan from 17 to 21, which is the current plan we have. Do I have a mover for this? Don't have a mover. No one's cameras are frozen. Councillor Harriman, you are moving this. And Councillor White, I see you as seconding. Is there any opposition to this, councillors? No opposition. Councillor Harriman, did you wish to speak to this?
I think it's fairly procedural, Mr. Mayor, so I'm happy to let it go through on the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor White, did you wish to speak to this?
Pretty much the same as Councillor Harriman on this one, Mr. Mayor. The report, I think, is self-explanatory, and in those circumstances, I'm happy to second it.
Okay. Well, if there's any opposition at all to it, I've called for. No one's indicated that. If there are no speakers, both a mover and seconder have indicated they don't wish to speak to it. That just carries unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. That was 14.2. We're moving now to 15.1. Councillor Harriman, I'm going to hit dismiss. Well, actually, I might get you to leave. Last time I hit dismiss someone from a meeting, my thing froze, so I might get you to do that. If you can head off. Just confirm that Councillor Harriman has left. I'll just check the other view, which shows everyone who's not present. Okay, thank you. Councillor Harriman's currently out of the virtual room and not in this meeting. We're moving to 16.1, sorry, which is the grants. Councillor McFarlane, I note that you're giving me a wave. You're moving this. Do I have a seconder? Oh, everyone's seconding. Councillor Law. Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Law. Any opposition to this? No, no one's got any opposition. Councillor McFarlane, did you wish to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a process that both the council and the council officers have been working through over a number of months. It's certainly been a very complex process. to pull all the various grants and sponsorship programs together. And I think we've achieved what we set out to do, and we now see some consistency how we approach this issue, ensuring a transparent and logical approach to how community grants and sponsorships are allocated. By adopting this motion tonight, Mr. Mayor, this process will now be available to the community to provide feedback. And I think from my point of view, the way I see it, given that it has been so complex in pulling it all together, there are going to be little bits and pieces of it that need tweaking along the way. And I think that's certainly something we can do in 12 months' time and tweak it all to fit. However, we will be, if this motion is carried, we will be reconsidering any or considering any community feedback at our July meeting. And I would encourage members of our community who may see something that has been missed. I would doubt that there's been terribly much missed given the time and effort that has gone into it. So I commend this resolution to the council, Mr. Mayor, noting that it's taken some years for us to get to a point where I think we're generally all happy with how this matter is approached. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Law, you're the seconder. You have an opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Dan. Councillor McFarlane said it all basically. Probably the most important part is that I think we should commend our officers for the work that's been taken on this project. It has been a long time coming. The realignment is to try and simplify it and make it easy access for everybody to understand the whole process, so that no one actually misses out, as has happened in the past by if you missed the first round, you could wait 12 months to get another one. This has basically given everybody nearly 2 bites at the cherry for the whole year. So I think it is a great process moving forward. And I think, as Councillor McFarlane said, is that any fine tweaking will be done after the first 12 months to try and make this as best as user-friendly as possible for everyone in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Law. Any other speakers on this motion, either for or against? Councillor Middlemas has indicated, then Councillor White. Councillor Middlemas, you're up next. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually going to speak in some detail about this, but I'd really be repeating what the previous two speakers have said. For a long time, many people have regarded our grants process as far from transparent, too complicated, awkward. I've known organisations to walk away from making an application because they couldn't simply understand the process. So a lot of work's gone into clearing that up, making it a very transparent process and making it, I hope, much, much better for our community. I can see a few rough edges in this. I'm sure the public consultation period will expose a few more, but I wouldn't be in a position to oppose this because I believe there are two ways we can knock any rough edges off. The first one is the public consultation process, which we're about to enter into, and the second one is to try it for a year. That will certainly expose any small shortcomings in it. But this is certainly a win for the community in that it does make our grants process much more transparent, much more easier to understand, and hopefully a lot more accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemas. Councillor White, you had indicated to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to build on that which has been said so far, and as you can see from the proposed resolution, the number of grant categories that we have within Latrobe City is quite immense, really, and I think that you know, we are going from minor capital works through to tourism, major events, advisory committee funding programs, and economic development funding, sponsorship, and options that are potentially able to be accessed as well. And so they're all summarised within this report, and I think that it's important to remind our community that we do value sincerely the volunteer efforts of our community members who are engaged in helping to create the culture and infrastructure that we have on offer to be able to be enjoyed within the municipality. And so it is important that we try and get this review undertaken in a way that really does make it facilitate, if you like, the continuing involvement of those volunteers in our community, and it's able to be understood, and that the process is not too complicated. And I suppose the other significant factor is that, as I recall, that there's an opportunity through all of this that groups out there that want to consider accessing funds would be able to be supported by staff of the council as well, in terms of getting them through the process. But again, I suppose the critical thing here is that there is, providing this resolution is passed tonight, that there's a period from now and through to the 7th of June for our community members out there and clubs and organisations to get their heads around what it is that's being proposed here, and which is a comprehensive review, and to provide us with feedback, so that when we finally adopt something, that it's going to be the best effort that we can achieve as an outcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Middlemas, I note you're just checking on Councillor Law. I think that might be a computer has slipped sideways rather than a technical difficulty, but we will need to be able to see Councillor Law certainly before we go to a vote. Yes, I think I saw the computer slip or something like that.
I'll just check, Mr. Mayor. It's just down the passage.
He might, Councillor McFarlane, I think there might be an IT person with him. If not, we'll just adjourn.
It shouldn't be long, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. So I think Councillor Law has probably had to restart something and has left the meeting, and then we'll be coming back in. Just noticed him disappear through his camera, but he seems to still be in the participant list. So he may well be here. But as the guidelines say, we need to be able to see each other and hear each other and be heard. So we'll get him back in.
Dan?
Hello, Brad, how are you?
Yeah, I actually leant back and my earphones actually shut me Surface Square down, so closed it down, and now it wants to do a Windows update. So I'm just on a mobile phone at the moment.
Right.
So I can see everybody though. I got everyone in picture.
We just need to be able to see you. Are we able to get Hannah to turn that camera on or not?
Yep. Press the camera there. Yep. How's that?
But that is great. Yep. So now you're on.
Yep.
Sorry
Sorry about that.
Microsoft to do an update.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Well, thanks very much for getting back on. Councillor White has just finished speaking. I was just going to ask if there are any other speakers to this. I noticed that some hands went up at the start, so I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to speak to 16.1, which is our grants and sponsorship program. Any other speakers? No? All right. Thank you very much. I've had 4 speakers, and so we do need to put this to the vote. And while I can see you all, which is great, I will ask Councillor McFarlane if you wish to close. Councillor McFarlane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's all been said.
All right, thank you, Councillor McFarlane. Sorry for skipping over that option to close the debate. We will now put this to the vote. So all those in favour of this resolution? All right, I can see all hands up. So Councillor Law, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor White, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Middlemas, Councillor Howe and myself. That is 7 of us in the room at the moment. So that has been carried unanimously. I will ask if the governance officers were able to contact Councillor Harriman and bring him back into the virtual room. He's at home somewhere, so we'll get him on the text message and re-invite him into the meeting. Councillor O'Callaghan, I note you preempting the next move, eh? Okay, thank you for that nod.
I've sent Councillor Harriman a message, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That's great. Here he is now. Councillor Harriman has joined us, but we'll wait for Councillor Harriman to have his camera on and we'll test his microphone to see that he can hear us and see us.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just having difficulty getting all the councillors back on. Bear with me. I've only got 2 or 3 on screen. So
okay, yeah, that's fine. We can certainly see you and hear you, so it's good.
Yep, got you all back now, Mr. Mayor. All good.
You can see everyone. You can hear me. And we can hear you. Great. Thanks very much, Councillor Harriman. We've moved to 16.2. The Reconciliation Action Plan. Have a mover in Councillor O'Callaghan, who's indicated that, by a wave, and Councillor Middlemas as a seconder. Are there any opposition to this, councillors? No? Councillor O'Callaghan, you have the floor. Microphone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just wanting to speak to the Reconciliation Action Plan. This is a draft Reconciliation Action Plan that will then be put to Reconciliation Australia. We're looking for Council's conditional endorsement. Councillors will notice that in the title of the draft document that is attached, it mentions Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan. This is to give an indication of the level of action plan that is presented by this council to Reconciliation Australia. There are 4 levels of plan that are presented to them, and Innovate, it relates to the level that we are currently presenting. We've developed a detailed outline of the work we are seeking to achieve through our plan. This has been developed through a broad range of consultation with key stakeholders across our municipality, but also across broader Gippsland, where it relates to peak bodies. We will, at the completion of this work, present the plan, but also come back and provide some additional information to council with a bit more detail around how we will further work through supporting our community and working in an aligned way around reconciliation. This has been a document and a body of work that's been undertaken in conjunction with Reconciliation Australia, the Gunai-Kurnai Land and Waters Aboriginal Corporation, also many will be familiar of the reference to the term GLAWAC. GLAWAC have indicated their endorsement for this draft. We're very appreciative of the support they've given to our team and the work that we've undertaken. And they've also worked with councillors in the past in terms of increasing our awareness and acknowledgement of importance of cultural awareness and cultural safety in relation to the work that we do. The Bragglong Advisory Committee, which is a committee of council that is undertaken and supported by the elders of the local Aboriginal community, have also provided support and aided in the development of the Reconciliation Action Plan. There are 4 key areas of work in relation to the type of focus we would like to bring. They are relationships, respect for culture, opportunities and governance. And further, there are 19 actions, each of which has deliverable items that council and other organisations have committed to. So we'll be looking to maintain very strong relationships with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, and that will occur through a range of activities that we undertake within community and within our organisation, an ongoing respect and acknowledgement of culture of those communities, and we see that demonstrated quite publicly through activities such as our celebrations of NAIDOT Week, and also opportunities for us to concentrate on building further socio and economic outcomes for our local community, where there often needs to be an additional area of focus, particularly in relation to health, wellbeing and education. Governance is about who is responsible for that work and how that will be oversighted by the working group. Very happy to recommend this draft. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor O'Callaghan, it seems a skill that you can work to the 3-minute clock with not a second to spare. Councillor Middlemas, you are our seconder. Give you the opportunity to speak now. I'll unmute your microphone. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. There's no need for me to repeat what Councillor O'Callaghan has said. She's covered the subject completely. We, as a council, have played a leadership role in reconciliation as far as councils are concerned for over 20 years. And this just puts us at the forefront of reconciliation again. I strongly endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any other councillors wish to speak for this motion or against this motion? Either or, just if you wish to speak. No, there's no indication of anyone else speaking. Councillor O'Callaghan, did you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to offer my thanks to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders and community who've been overwhelmingly supportive of the work that we undertake and have also gone to great lengths to ensure our understanding of culture, the importance of the working relationships that we build and the patience that they bring to help inform our understanding of this body of work, but more importantly, our ongoing working relationship that Councillor Middlemas has referred to, because we do value it greatly. Very happy to recommend this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Callaghan. Councillor Middlemas. We will put this to the vote. All those in favour. Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor White, Councillor Middlemas, Councillor Howe and myself. That has carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors, for working that through. We move to item 17.1 on the agenda. This is the proposal to rename the southern section of Brady's Road Faulknerised Tyres. Councillor Howe, I see you. I recognise you as the mover. Councillor Harriman, give me a wave as well. Are you wishing to second that? Yes, okay. Just wanted to clarify it wasn't a question. Councillor Howe is the mover, Councillor Harriman as a seconder. Any opposition to this, councillors, or questions? Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can hear me all right?
Yep, perfectly.
Just briefly, this was up, this particular road was up at council some while back, and we actually picked a name for it. However, it wasn't approved by Geographic Names Victoria. So it's gone up to our new committee, the Road and Place Name Advisory Committee, and we've come up with the name Faulkner Rise. The road is going to be named in honour of Frederick Roland Faulkner. He's an Anzac veteran born in Tyres. It's got the stamp of approval from our committee. It fits in with our council guidelines. So this motion will now move to the next stage, which is the community consultation, where we invite people to write submissions. This is one of our statutory requirements. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Howe. Councillor Harriman, you were the seconder. Your chance to speak now.
I think Councillor Howe said it all, Mr Mayor. Just fully support what he said.
Thanks very much, Councillor Harriman. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak for or against this motion? No, there isn't. Councillor Howe, did you want to close off?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We have had speakers, so we do need to put this to the vote. So all those in favour of agenda item 17.1. It is a sea of hands, but I'll call them. Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor White, Councillor Middlemas, Councillor Howe and myself. Has been passed unanimously. 17.1. 17.2 is the potential exchange of land, Marshalls Road, Park Lane, Franklin Place Estate, Terrelgan. Do I have a mover for 17.2? Councillor Harriman, I'll note you as the mover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howe, no, she was a seconder. Thank you very much. Any opposition to this, councillors? No, I'm just taking my time to ensure I don't miss anyone. No opposition. Councillor Harriman, did you wish to speak to this?
Just very quickly, Mr Mayor, to explain that council is exchanging a parcel of land it owns for some from the developer, similar size, and all it does is improve the accessibility of the development and the overall flow of traffic within the development. There's no benefit to the developer, no benefit to council. It just provides a better outcome for the community, which I think is a great thing. And thanks the officers for bringing forward the report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Howe, did you wish to speak on this?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Howe. Any other councillor wish to speak to this 17.2? No, there is no one indicating they wish to speak for or against. Councillor Harriman will give you the option to close the argument.
All good, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. We have had speakers, so we do need to put it to a physical vote. So all those in favour? Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor White, Councillor Middlemas, Councillor Howe and myself has been passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillor Law, once you've got Hannah, she might take you where you are twice. We won't count you for 2 votes. You only get 1 vote even though you're on screen twice. So thank you to working that technology out. I'm glad to see you back. Good, thank you, Councillor Law. We're moving to 17.3, which is the finance report for March 2020. Do I have a mover? Councillor McFarlane, I note your hand wave. There's a seconder, Councillor White. So Councillor McFarlane and Councillor White. Is there any opposition to this? No opposition. Councillor McFarlane, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we can all see, the report for the end of the third quarter for the year shows the organisation is in a financially healthy situation. And to the layman that perhaps looking at the document, the report forecasts a surplus result of $48.1 million. This does not mean that that amount is available for spending. Each year we budget for a surplus so that we can fund things like new and upgraded assets and to enable repayment of existing loans. report also includes government grants for capital works that were expected in the previous financial year, but were not received until the current year. And any other unbudgeted income received for specific projects. Mayor, despite the impacts that we're experiencing at the moment, it appears that we will continue to operate over the next 3 months within the parameters of our adopted budget, and I congratulate our financiers who keep us all on the straight and narrow line. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor White, as a seconder, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, just to follow on from Councillor McFarlane, I think that in the report we have 17.3 on page 218, the 5 dot points there really, and particularly the 2, 3, and 4 really capture the essence of what Councillor McFarlane has been talking about. And the only other comment that I'd make is that, as is indicated further in the report, that the financial performance ratios indicate that the council remains within the industry expected ranges. And so I think as want to reiterate the remarks made by Councillor McFarlane in regard to the performance by the team headed up by the CEO, Mr. Piacetti, that financially, we're up to the end of the third quarter, we're sitting in pretty great shape, and obviously, what's around the corner, that's going to require continuing careful management, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor White. Any other councillors wish to speak to this 17.3? Councillor McFarlane, I'll give you the option to close.
No thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's all been said.
Thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane. We'll put this to the vote now. So all that are in favour of 17.3, the finance report for March 2020, raise hands now. Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor White, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Howe, Councillor Middlemiss, and myself has gone through unanimously. Thank you very much. 17.4. We move to the presentation of the Audit and Risk Committee minutes of the 12th March 2020. Do we have a mover for this? Councillor White, happy to move. Thank you very much. And Councillor McFarlane, the second. Any opposition, councillors? I think so, no. Councillor White, would you like to speak to this?
I think, Mr. Mayor, just to acknowledge the continuing participation and involvement of our external audit committee members, who I believe that we're very fortunate to have the benefit of their knowledge and experience on the deck with us in their role, and so it's we're in good hands, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly are. Thank you very much, Councillor White. Councillor McFarlane.
No thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak for or against this resolution, this motion? No. Councillor White, you have the opportunity to close.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, raise your hand now and I'll count you off. Councillor Law, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Harriman, Councillor White, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Howe, Councillor Middlemiss, and myself has been carried unanimously for 17.4. 17.5 is the tabling of the Assembly of Councillors. Do I have a mover here for 17.5? Councillor Middlemiss, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Law, thank you very much. Any opposition to this? Councillor Middlemiss, do you wish to speak? No. Councillor Law, do you wish to speak? No. Any other councillor wish to speak? No, quite a procedural one, this one. The tabling Assembly of Councillors, as there have been no speakers and no opposition, that is automatically carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. As stated earlier on, at the end of 17.5, we're going to move back to the notices of motion that have been presented. We have two before us, and now I think we are into the run of the meeting. We have our online virtual meeting running quite smoothly. I think that we're able to touch on these notices of motion first. I just would like to preface before we go into notice of motions that as a matter of principle, it is a right of a councillor to bring any notice of motion to the meeting. And I know that through the discussions that we've had over the last couple of days, there have been questions as to whether there is validity in bringing these notices of motion to this council meeting. I have spoken to the people who have brought these notices of motion and worked through this process with them. These are valid. They are here for a reason, and the councillors do have that democratic right to bring these notices of motion to this meeting. So we need to respect that as we move through this process. Councillor Harriman, you have notices of motion that you've brought for us at 9.1. You and I have spoken about this at length over a number of times. I've spoken to you about the option of reviewing this and what might be a mechanism that you would feel appropriate, and you feel that this is the appropriate way to bring this to our council meeting. So I know that you wish to speak to this, but so I'll open it up to you as the mover. So at 9.1, notices of motion, we have the prohibit the display of Nazi flags and symbols has been set to us by Councillor Dale Harriman. Do I have a mover? Councillor Harriman, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Does anyone wish to second this? If we don't second it, it will lapse and we'll move on. The option for anyone else to second it? No, there's no seconder. Councillor Harriman, we don't have a seconder for your notice of motion. Okay, you happy? All right. I know that this is something that you wanted to bring to councils, and I think that there may be another option for us in the future to bring back something to this council to address the concerns that you have, and I think that the concerns that the residents within our municipality have contacted you about, and there might be other ways that we can address those appropriately and ensure that those needs and concerns are met. So thank you very much for working that through as we have. We'll move to 9.2, which is the other notice of motion. Councillor McFarlane, you have sent through this notice of motion 9.2 for the Hazelwood Pondage. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McFarlane giving a wave. Do I have a seconder? Councillor White, thank you. Just mark those. Councillor White, Councillor McFarlane. Any opposition to this notice of motion regarding the Hazelwood Pondage? No, there's no opposition. Councillor McFarlane, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to start with a little bit of history, in recognition of our community's strong desire to retain the Hazelwood Pondage, which has been amongst this community for over 60 years now and utilised by the people of Latrobe City, the people of Gippsland, and more broadly the people of Victoria. The council wrote to the Premier, you may recall, on the 21st of August last year, requesting the government to fund a feasibility study on all options to retain the Hazelwood Pondage as a recreationally accessible waterway. Premier Andrews passed that request on to Minister Symes, who responded to that in October, suggesting her strong encouragement for ONGI's full and comprehensive consideration of options that may allow for the pondage to be retained for community use. And also she had encouraged ONGI to work with Latrobe City and local user groups in good faith to explore all possible possibilities for the future of the pondage. In that response, there was no reference to a feasibility study. Mr. Mayor, there's been a number of discussions with ONGI, both at the local level and at the head office in Melbourne level, and those discussions have concluded with ONGI not being prepared to allow access to the reduced level waterway, and their advice to us that both the Aquatic and Yacht Club buildings will be demolished in the short to medium term. As a result, this notice of motion really addresses the history and where we are now. So we're requesting ONGI to retain those two identified buildings until we have some decision from the government in relation to the future of the pondage. We've again reiterated with Minister Symes seeking support for funding to undertake a feasibility study. And again, reiterating and representing our community, the retention of the pondage and the potential tourism and agricultural opportunities it presents in the region. We really must get some direction from the government if they are prepared or not prepared to support the broad community support that is out there in relation to the pondage retention. Once those buildings are removed, then I don't believe there is any going back. The notice of motion also seeks a meeting with Harriet Shing, our local member, and whilst Harriet was certainly actively involved when there was initially a discussion about the closure of the caravan park a few years ago.
Councillor McFarlane, your 3 minutes has come up. If you've got a couple of more things to say, I might ask if anyone wants to give you an extension.
Look, I've only got a couple more words, Mr. Mayor.
I'll see if I can get you an extension. Councillor Howe has and Councillor Middlemas has seconded you. All those in favour of an extension? Yes, everyone's got their hands up. Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, you can continue on without rushing that through.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yes, as I was saying, the part of the motion seeking a meeting with Harriet Shing, I think is very important. Harriet represents this local community, and I think it's important that we have her on side who can become our link into Minister Symes and to the Premier. And I suppose just finally in summing up, we as a community are very grateful for what our government, our state government has provided to this community over the last couple of years. We have some wonderful new facilities. We've been quite well looked after. But my concern is we have this asset that was built by the SEC, provided for the community, and there is some risk that we now will lose it. And I think we've got to go in for the fight at the end to ensure that at least we look at the feasibility. The feasibility might stack up somewhere else, but until such time as we do that, we've got nowhere to go. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd ask my fellow councillors if they would support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. I think it might be opportune time to stand as well, Councillor McFarlane, because I think the light's going off in your office after hours. So if you move around a bit, your light might come back on. Just wave, that's it. But, very funny. We actually can't continue the meeting until he's back on screen. So there we go. Okay, Councillor White, you were the seconder of this notice of motion. We'll give you the opportunity now to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Mayor, the Latrobe City Council is a key role for this council is to be representative of our community in regard to the issues that our community faces, and clearly, yeah, with the demise of the Hazelwood Power Station and all that goes with it, that there's been a significant reaction within our community in terms of in so many different ways, and in a negative sense. But there's an opportunity here with regard to the Hazelwood Pondage, and that's been recognised by many community associations, and we've also got the Friends of the Hazelwood Pondage group that's been established who are keen to see the pondage have a continuing life. And I suppose the thing is that only just recently we rechecked with the Latrobe Valley Yacht Club in regard to their current situation. Are they still keen as mustard to be able to have an access to the Hazelwood Pondage for their yachting purposes, even with the water level down by the 2.7 metres, and they tell us clearly yes. And the thing is that what we've got in front of us is NG wanting to look at the possibility of, well, with the lease expiring fairly imminently, that what's the future of the Aquatic Centre and the Yacht Club facility there. Now, we know that the Aquatic Centre and the first and the bottom floor of the Yacht Club facility was paid for by the SEC, as we understand it, and gifted to the community when those facilities were created. And the Yacht Club itself developed the double-storey section of that particular Yacht Club facility. And so what we're trying to do here through this particular motion, as I see it, is to do a number of things. One is to get Angie to hold fire in regard to any thoughts of demolition. The other one is to try and engage with the minister to have a conversation with her in regard to how we might be able to work together and get an appropriate solution here for the longer term, including the possibility of the subdivision of the pondage off from the rest of the ownership that Angie has of the whole power station and mine area. But let's have the conversation, and we see the pondage as being a long-term asset for the future of our municipality. It does represent the opportunity for recreational yachting, fishing, agriculture, aquaculture, air ambulance training, and also a water resource for firefighting purposes. And clearly there's an economic impact if we can have that waterway have a continuing life, that from a tourism point of view, that this is something that can be really enhanced through that particular facility. So we really need to be able to engage with the state government and through our local member, with the support of the local member Harriet Shing, to sit down together and try and figure out a solution that is going to be practical and possible. And I support the comments that Councillor McFarlane made earlier in relation to the good things that the state government have done for Latrobe Valley community and Latrobe City in particular in recent times. And here's another, I know that the Premier and others have got a significant amount on their hand of issues on their hands, but we really need to have this matter addressed. And knowing that Minister Symes is a country girl from Benalla originally, you know, and surely understands the challenge that regional settings have to deal with. That we need to really get her engaged as well to be able to maximise the potentiality of this particular facility having a continuing life for the long term, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor White. Are there any other speakers to this notice of motion 9.2? Councillor Middlemas, I'll move my, there you go.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In response to very strong pushback by our community that they wanted the Hazelwood Pondage retained as a prime recreational facility, one that's been there for 50 odd years, Council has negotiated, worked on proposals, had many meetings with Angie over a period of almost 6 months now, and it's time to say that we have not made much progress. They're very amicable negotiations, I must make that very clear, but we have not made the progress we hope to make. So quite simply, it's time to kick it to the next level of government above us, say to the state government, can you help us on this issue? So that's what we're doing. It's not a case of we're going, oh, it's too hard. We've put an enormous amount of effort, enormous amount of negotiations, proposals, the whole lot. They've not been successful. It's time to call the state government in, and I think our community would understand. We've done our best. Now we're looking for help from the next level up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Minimus. Is there any other councillors who wish to speak to this 9.2 Hazelwood Pondage notice of motion? No, I'm getting some shaking of heads. No one's jumping out of their skin. To do that. Councillor McFarlane, did you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, but I think this is our opportunity now to try and get this process moving. We've been through the process, as Councillor Middlemas has said, over the last probably longer than 6 months, a year or so now. we're getting to a stage, and I know we're in an environment where there are other priorities, but it is really important from our community's point of view that we have some sit down with the government and get some level of understanding and hopefully commitment to the future. Irrespective, I suppose, of the outcome, at least we've got to go through that process. And until such time as we've done that, we don't really know where we're heading. So it's really important that we meet with the Minister and with our local member to progress that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane, and thank you very much to the other speakers, the three councillors who have been sitting on this working committee with the community. So thank you for speaking. We put this to the vote now, councillors. All those in favour of Resolution 9.2, notice of motion. This is Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Law, Councillor Harriman, Councillor White, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Howe, Councillor Middlemas, and myself. Is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. We move now to 18 in the agenda, which is urgent business. Is there any urgent business before this council this evening? Haven't been notified of anything prior to the meeting. I don't think there's any. No, silence all round. So then we come to the part of the meeting which is closed to the public. Those items are listed in the agenda of what they are. So we will thank very much to everyone who has participated. Certainly our two speakers tonight who have joined us via video and phone to put their thoughts forward to this council, and also for the people who at home live streaming either via YouTube or watching via Facebook. Thank you very much for your patience as we work through the technology of this being our first virtual online meeting that we've been able to stream. So thank you very much, councillors. We'll say goodbye and then close the meeting. We'll take a 5-minute break where you can turn your cameras off and your microphones off and grab a cup of tea, and then we'll be back in a couple of minutes to deal with the two items on the agenda. Thank you very much and good evening to everyone.